Hello, everyone. My name is Abigail Barbanel, and I've been a psychotherapist for 26 years. In fact, next month will be my 26th anniversary. Welcome to my podcast. It's the third one in the series that I call Taking the Mystery Out of Psychotherapy. This podcast is important because it's going to cover the topic of integration, which is in fact the purpose of psychotherapy, and I'll discuss it throughout this podcast. I wanted to say that today I'm using a different recording system and I'm also not using a script. So I hope you can forgive me if it's a little bit unpolished. I've never done podcast before. This is the first time that I'm trialing podcasting. So I hope that what I share is still clear enough and useful enough to everybody. Another thing I wanted to say is that to those of you who haven't heard the first two podcasts yet, everything that I share, all these podcasts will always remain free for everybody to use. I'm not going to monetize them. I make my living out of being a psychotherapist, and everything else is offered freely. I know the value of what I do with my clients. I see the results. I'm very, very fortunate to see the results every day, and I'd like to share it with as many people as possible. I believe that this is not just useful for us as individuals, it is absolutely crucial to our relationships, to the way that we raise children, and basically to the welfare of and to all of humanity and the planet. So this episode I call The Gifts and the Science of Integration, and I will explain all about it. So at the end of last episode, I described the problem that we have in humanity, that we have two wonderful brains, the limbic system, which is old and gives us all our emotions and scans the environment and helps us stay alive and well. And it's really kind of interested in the survival of the species. Then we have this bit of brain in the front, which is quite superb. It's extraordinary. It gives us the qualities that really make us humans. Without this, we're just a really, really clever primate that can do lots of things, that can create atomic bombs and aircrafts and all kinds of incredible stuff, mobile phones and the technology that I'm using to speak to you right now. Everything that we have in this modern world, we are able to do because of our neocortex. But without the prefrontal cortex, we are doing it all in the service of a survivalist brain. And this brain is more interested in our individual survival for the purpose of furthering the survival of the species. So basically, it's kind of a selfish brain. It says, me, 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 I have to live forever. I don't want to die. If anybody is threatening me, I'm going to have to survive this. I'm going to have to fight them. We also prioritize our own little group because of our history. Humans survived so much better in groups and not on their own. And so we prioritize our groups, so we can be quite tribal from this brain. If there are people over there that I don't like so much, then I'm gonna stick with my own people, and I'm maybe gonna fight them, or I'm gonna compete with them. So that's our limbic brain. And imagine that all of that ingenuity is in the service of that. What this does for us, the front of the brain, it gives us qualities that make us actually safe for one another. It makes us thoughtful. It makes us ethical. It gives us self-awareness. It gives us the ability to think clearly, to plan ahead, to consider everything, to consider loads and loads of data before we make decisions. Here we tend to be quite impulsive, and here we tend to be much more thoughtful with the capacity to plan ahead. We're much more objective as well. I'd like to share the screen with you to show you an image that I showed you last time, to explain what really the problem is with this kind of brain structure. So just let me share the screen, and here we go. Share. So this slide, or this image, is taken from a paper from a journal called The Neurobiology of Stress, the effects of stress exposure on prefrontal cortex. What it actually shows is that when we are in a state of calm, we're safe, we feel safe, we're interested, we are alert, we are present. because our prefrontal cortex is in charge and it regulates everything top down. It regulates our behavior, it regulates our feelings, and we feel grounded, we feel like grown-ups. But then what happens to us is that when the limbic brain is triggered into stress, and stress isn't just I have a lot to do or not enough time to do it in, stress is actually a sense of threat. So when the limbic brain feels under threat, it hijacks the prefrontal cortex, it weakens it, and it takes control. And in those situations, we are caught up in behaviors that are instinctual, that maybe are wired from our past. We don't make good choices. We can be aggressive. We can fall apart. These are the situations where people say something that they later regret and they think, "Why did I say that?" We don't feel like grown-ups when we're in this situation. So, what does therapy do? Therapy's job, in effect, is to integrate these two brains. These two brains are not naturally integrated. We are the descendants of those who survived on a very difficult planet where survival wasn't guaranteed, food wasn't guaranteed, it wasn't safe all the time, it was scary and threatening. So the limbic brain did much better at helping us survive immediate threats. So 13,000 years ago, when humans still lived alongside incredibly dangerous predators who were very, very big, we competed with them on food, and some of them ate us like giant hyenas. It made a lot more sense that the limbic brain would take over, because imagine that you're standing in front of a saber-toothed tiger and you think, oh, what a wonderful beast, and I feel so much empathy for it. I don't think that these people who had access to empathy at the time in a moment of great danger, they probably didn't do well at survival as those who were able to immediately go into fight, flight, or freeze. So they either fled or they fought or they played dead enough so that they managed to survive. Either way, we are the survivors. We are the descendants of those people who survived better. So, and also, as I mentioned before in the previous podcast, the prefrontal cortex is really, really new in humanity, and this is really, really, really old. They kind of didn't have enough time together, if you like, for them to be sufficiently integrated. So, without sufficient integration, the limbic brain is capable of shutting down the prefrontal cortex and takes over. So, let me stop sharing that. What we're in effect doing in therapy is actually integrating these two brains. Integration is available to us in potential. So we have the capacity to integrate, but we need input from outside to do this early in life. So it's very similar to when we learn language, when we learn our language. The human brain, we're born with areas of the brain that are ready to wire in language. But we're not born speaking a language. We don't know any language when we're born. The brain is just ready to wire it in. So when a child, a baby, is exposed to people talking around them, they hear the languages around them, people talk to them, their brain begins to wire everything from outside and creates pathways that enable the child to begin to have the language wired into the brain. All learning depends on wiring in the brain. So then when the child's mouth and all the other apparatus become ready to function, the child suddenly starts to utter words. If you talk to a very small child, you will notice that they understand actually a lot more than they can say initially. But the point is that everything in us, in a way, is in potential, and it waits for input from outside to wire in. The human brain is extraordinary with the level of neuroplasticity that we have and what we're capable of wiring in. It gives us our capacity to be adaptable and to learn all through life. It also makes us vulnerable as well, because everything that's going to be in our environment is going to be wired in. So when parents do the right thing with their children, when they approach things the right way, which I will get to in a minute, they wire their children from outside in. By the time the child is older, their brain is going to be integrated. But most of us have not had that. The parents I had and all of my clients did not have parents who knew what it is that they were supposed to do to help the child grow up with integration. And why is that important? Because integration between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic brain is directly it's directly relevant to our actual psychology. So wiring in the language center is important for wiring. Motor skills are in some motor areas of the brain. Visual cortex does what visual cortex does. But this bit, the relationship between these two brains, actually, it's what our psychology is going to look like. If we're better integrated, our psychology is going to be different to when we're not so well integrated. So what the problem in therapy is that an adult or a therapist can't integrate from outside in the brain of an adult client. We can't actually do that. Or if we do, it's incredibly limited. For therapists who work with children and young people, or anybody who works with young people and children, you have you will have the satisfaction of knowing that you're wiring the children directly, which is incredible because you can really have a massive impact on their psychology and the psychology that they grow up with. But as a therapist working with adults, there is only so much I can do to I can't integrate basically an adult client's brain. But what we do in therapy, what therapists are supposed to be doing, is provide an environment that facilitates the integration for them, that gives them all the conditions they need to feel secure, to feel comfortable with the therapist, to feel safe, feel encouraged, and also for the therapy relationship, the relationship between the therapist and the client to mirror the outcome that we want in the client's brain. The way that this works is that the prefrontal cortex needs to be trained to connect with the limbic system. And the limbic system, if you remember, is where all our emotions are generated. Basically, in therapy, we don't mess with the limbic brain. In most people, the limbic brain has suffered enough. There's enough emotions wired in there, and trouble and traumas and hurt. We don't want to mess with that. What we're really doing in therapy is we're catching up on the development that the parents perhaps should have done. The parent should have trained the child, or should have integrated the child, interacted with the child from their own prefrontal cortex when the child expresses emotions. Oh, sorry. Then they do the right thing, which enables the child's brain to integrate. In therapy, my job is to teach my clients to do that, which is what I'm going to teach you as well. So as my clients learn to access their prefrontal cortex more reliably, not just by chance when it happens, and then validate all of their emotions, that begins to create better connectivity between the brains and the brain, and it's called vertical integration. So this is vertical integration. I will, in the next episode, I will actually do the fundamental or basic exercise that I teach all of my clients. But the expectation always is that people will develop their own way of doing it. The most important thing to understand now is that when we validate emotions, validation is not just a fancy word. Validation simply means that the prefrontal cortex is being trained to receive information from the limbic brain. And that's how the brain creates connectivity. We push information and the brain responds by creating connectivity. It's an extraordinary system what we have in our heads, and most people have no idea that all of our learning depends on it. Except adults, of course, need to do it themselves. Nobody can push, can put new neurons and new neural pathways and networks into your head. What integration does to us is, one, it obviously enables us to not be shut down. So over time, the better the integration, the limbic brain is unable to shut down the prefrontal cortex anymore. So that means I can be fully present to myself and to others, even when I feel strong emotions. And the two things I'm asking my clients to pay attention to as they begin to integrate and the integration improves, the vertical integration improves, is that the two things they're going to notice is that their anxiety levels begin to diminish and that they recover from triggers that are familiar to them really fast, a lot faster than before, than ever before. What that means is that they might have a trigger that triggers their limbic brain into something, but this doesn't leave the room, if you like, or it comes back really, really quickly and it starts to do its job. What this does is regulate the limbic brain. It regulates the emotions and it regulates the entire brain and the body as well. So this is like the grown up. This is your most advanced, most amazing piece of kit that you've got in your head. And without that, and without the connectivity, there is no therapy. Therapy is not a process where people sit and tell a lot of sad stories. And to a therapist who's really nice and understanding, if that's the case, I mean, there's nothing wrong with telling stories. But if that's the case, then all that's going to happen is the limbic brain is going to relax a bit because it gets to tell stuff. It might tell secrets that it's held for a long time. It might share anguish, and it might share conflicts and all kinds of stuff and stories from the past or things that trouble it. But all that's going to happen is the limbic brain, the person's going to feel a little bit better. But feeling better isn't the purpose of therapy. Feeling better, you can talk to a friend and they'll probably help you feel better. But feeling better isn't therapy. Feeling better is just feeling better. And there's nothing wrong with it. Therapy is a process where we change the architecture of our brain permanently so that we can begin to fulfill the potential that's embedded in us. As I told you, this is in potential. And if this was not enabled, if the integration was not enabled in early childhood and throughout the child's development, then we have to do it as adults. And it's harder, yes, because we're much more conscious of doing it, but it's totally doable. I ask my clients to not drink at all, and it's a condition for seeing me because every time people drink even a tiny amount of alcohol, it shuts this down. Why would you want to do that? If you want to achieve results effectively, quickly, and efficiently, then you have to make sure that all the bits of brain that you need are completely available to you. So this is integration. As I said, I will explain to you in the next episode exactly how to do that. The principle is that we validate emotions. I want to show you a couple of images that I also share with my clients. This one is just showing you that this is the size of that prefrontal cortex. It's a really, really big brain. It has functions like empathy, insight. It gives you response flexibility, which means that if you encounter a new situation or even when you're triggered, you have a choice about how to react. It regulates our emotion. It regulates the body. It gives us morality and ethics. I mean, that's extraordinary. It gives us access to intuition. It gives us attuned communication. Attuned communication, as Dan Siegel explains it, is the ability to have a sense of what goes on in somebody else's mind. It's like you can, it's like having a map of somebody else's inner reality. But it's not just that we have that, we also have the ability to know how to respond to them. The prefrontal cortex also can extinguish fear. The limbic brain, obviously, as I explained, fight, flight, or freeze, and that these are the stress responses. Stress means threat. The limbic brain is very concerned in, am I safe, and do people want me? Because if people don't want me, I'm dead. And emotions live here. This is how the person who made this slide, this is how they called it. And another thing that I wanted to share with you is a quote from Dan Siegel, which I really love and that I show all of my clients. So this quote shows it again describes the 9 traits, the 9 prefrontal cortex functions that include regulating our bodies, attuning to others, having emotional balance, calming fear, pausing before acting, having insight and empathy, being moral in our thinking and our actions, and having more access to intuition. And this is what Siegel has to say about integration. When a system becomes integrated, it is the most flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, and stable. This flow of energy and information that links separate elements together has the subjective experience of harmony. Like a choir singing Amazing Grace, each singer retains his or her own individual voice, while simultaneously linking together with intervals that drive the flow of the whole song. The sensation of harmony is the subjective side of the physical state of integration. The more integrated we are, the more peaceful we feel. When we're not sufficiently integrated, the limbic brain could contain a whole lot of stuff, a lot of conflicting emotions, things that were wired from the past. I will have an episode on trauma as well, so I will get to talk about it in more detail. But when we integrate better and all the information from the limbic brain, which is emotions, flows freely to the prefrontal cortex, which is the regulator of the brain, all of that comes down. So there is a sensation of harmony. There's a bit of science behind this too. The brain, the human brain, is a complex system. And complex systems, one of the properties that they have is called self-organization. When the limbic brain and the prefrontal cortex are not sufficiently integrated, it interferes with self-organization. But when we're connected better, self-organization is enabled. And it seems that self-organization is crucial to our psychological well-being. This is where we really feel like we're grown up, like we're grounded, like we're developing towards our potential. I think it's why wouldn't everybody want to do that? But the important point about taking the mystery out of therapy is that I want to explain to people that this is the actual task of therapy is to change the architecture of the brain. We are actually doing it. So I'm just wondering if there's anything more that I need to say to you at this point. I'll show you another image that I show to my clients, and in fact that I give them. This is a bookmark that I've produced that has a very brief, kind of rudimentary, basic practice on how to achieve vertical integration. So it involves accessing the prefrontal cortex. So basically, in the first session, I tell people just dabble with this. And in the second session, we actually do the exercise to make sure that they're doing it right and they feel confident that they know what they're doing. So with accessing the prefrontal cortex, basically just breathing. If you know any breathing practices, if you know meditation, or if you know mindfulness practices or anything at all, or even if you don't, just breathing a bit more deeply and imagining almost that you can breathe into your forehead will give you access to your prefrontal cortex. Once you do that, you then need to start to notice what feelings your limbic brain is communicating. And sometimes at first you don't know, it doesn't feel like anything. But then a moment later, you will start noticing your feelings, your thoughts, your body sensations. And then whatever it is you're feeling, try to tell yourself that it's okay to feel it. That's the validation bit. That's the bit that connects the brain. What you're feeling is okay. The second I'm here for you and everything is going to be okay, I've got you, the soothing and reassuring are necessary as well. But the actual connectivity is directly caused by this act of validation, which simply means we're allowing information from the limbic brain to flow to the prefrontal cortex and enabling then the prefrontal cortex to regulate ourselves. I'm asking my clients to dabble in after the first session. Just give it a shot, see how you go. I'm not interested in whether they're getting it right or anything like that. It's more about getting a sense of what did they experience? What was it like for them? Was it difficult? Was it easy? And then in the second session, I teach them the actual exercise so that they can be sure that they're doing it right. I will leave that on the screen for just a little bit longer, but you can also find this as a resource on my website. My website is fullyhuman.co.uk, fullyhuman.co.uk. The videos I'm recording will be, the first two are already there on the videos page. And these things like this are in the resources page. So if you go there, you'll be able to find a version of that. You can also take a screenshot from the device you're using, and you can go back on this and read it from the screen. You can stop the video. This is what's so good about doing videos, actually. So this is it for today. Remember, psychotherapy isn't airy-fairy. It's not a matter of just telling sad stories. It's not something that you should feel like you're opening your guts and um, and you're absolutely knackered afterwards, or you feel very, very raw. Actually, because I don't have a script, I forgot one more thing that I needed to say. So I said, just bear with me. I mentioned that this is vertical integration. So when you're doing this work, you're integrating vertically. But after a while of doing vertical integration, it's quite possible that any material that's wired in from the past that is interfering that has interfered with people's development, that's getting in the way, that's giving them behaviors or reactions to the world that they're not helpful to them, that needs to be integrated horizontally from right to left in the brain, from right to left. That happens spontaneously. Once there's sufficient vertical integration, the brain is sufficiently self-organizing and grounded, and it becomes safe to then integrate painful material from right to left. This is a very uncomfortable stage of therapy, especially, well, the worse the past is, the more uncomfortable it is, but it doesn't destabilize people. People are not only functioning, they're fully grounded. They can feel really difficult emotions, but everybody describes to me how they don't just disappear anymore. It's different to when you have triggers before and you feel like you're lost. When you feel those feelings, it isn't triggers anymore. This is what needs to happen. A lot of people think that this is therapy, and it kind of is. But really, what creates the infrastructure for this to happen is the vertical integration. I hear many stories of clients coming into therapy with me for the first time and telling me that another therapist kept insisting that they should talk about all the painful things and all the trauma that they have, and that they must do that or else they won't recover. In a way, it's true. But unless the therapist has coached the client to integrate vertically and has put enough time into this as necessary, the horizontal integration won't happen. It won't be safe. If we don't bulldoze our way into somebody else's right brain and all the painful material they've got there, we wait until the brain is ready and feels secure enough to do that, and then we integrate horizontally. And this is completely life-changing. Already from vertical integration, people feel quite dramatically different. And the vertical integration enables everyone, whatever past experiences they've had that have not been helpful or they've been very painful or even traumatic, that's the time when everybody integrates that, and then therapy is finished. The point of therapy isn't for therapists, it's not a lifestyle option. You don't go to therapy forever. You're supposed to change. So when the brain changes, you change. Our psychology depends on changes to the brain. So this is me for now, and I hope it's not too terrible that I've spoken without a script. And I look forward to the next episode where I will discuss how to actually do the exercise of integration. In the meantime, try to dabble with the bookmark that I showed you and see how you go. Thank you so much for watching this, and feel free to share with anybody you like, and watch this as many times as you like as well. Thank you very much. Bye.